It takes a secure person to share their knowledge.
Yep.
You know, and one thing that I try to teach our players all the time is like, we're secure. I'm secured as a coach. That's why I'm going to invite you in, even if we play.
Yep.
I'm going to invite you in. This is what we do. This is how we do it. This is what and now, okay. Insecure coaches, no. They're going to squirrel away their knowledge. They want yours, but they sure is not sharing theirs.
Welcome to the Southeast Elite Podcast. We're your hosts, Coach Jonathan Castaneda.
Coach Rob Campman.
And today we have a very special guest in Coach Kevin Sutton.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Coach Sutton has coached all levels, high school, college, the USA team, various experiences at all levels. And as we go through this journey and we see coaches on the road and we form relationships, Coach Sutton is definitely an ally of ours over the years, has recruited several Southeast Elite players. Very appreciative of his friendship and, you know, his mentorship in moments like these where we can really talk to him and you know, hear everything that he's experienced and how it can help future generations. So thank you, Coach, for being here.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so we're going to do a few announcements. For one, thank you for the warm reception of episode 1. The positive feedback, it really was overwhelming in a sense. You know, for those first couple weeks, we go to events and people saying, hey, man, we watched it and, you know, we really liked it. I want to hear more. I want to hear this and that. And, you know, we're humbled by that and we're glad that it's doing what we meant for it to do and serve the purpose it was meant to. And so,
yeah, we appreciate you having us back. That's the only reason we're back, because we got such good feedback. If the feedback was bad, I wouldn't be here.
Oh no, it was a 1 episode deal, and then it was like, well, let's see what happens. All right, but no, you know the viewers and friends and families, you guys have been awesome. So with that being said, we'd like to announce that the Southeast Elite Podcast has signed on for a full season 1. We're going to do an 8-episode series, you know, where we continue to bring clarity, knowledge, entertainment of some sort, and just differing perspectives, and also, most importantly, confronting hard truths.
Yep.
I think that's something that is important today. You know, not just mouthing off at the things that bother us or you know, what we don't like, but solutions to problems. And so thank you guys for making that possible. Before we jump in, we want to take a moment to thank our presenting sponsor, the All-State Tom Patterson Insurance, with offices in Tallahassee and Jacksonville. Tom and his team covered all of Florida and Georgia. Exciting news. Allstate has just launched a new, more affordable auto policy designed to fit your budget without compromising coverage. Check out the link in the comments section for quick quotes and learn how Tom Patterson Insurance and Allstate can get you prepared today. Lastly, for the announcements, congratulations to all of our athletes that played in the NCAA and NIT tournaments, as well as the newly founded Crown. You represented yourselves, your families, our family, the Southeast Elite family well on a national stage. You know, we're proud of everything you guys have accomplished, and we just want you to continue to push yourselves. Biggest congratulations this tournament goes to Denzel Aberdeen of the University of Florida. Winning a national championship. All right.
Yeah.
So
hit a big free throw too.
Yeah. He, you know, Denzel played incredibly, and you know, that's the pinnacle of it, of course, but Denzel makes us proud every day, you know, with the way he carries himself. You know, going into Florida as a freshman, staying down, listening to his role, doing exactly what was asked of him, continue to push himself to try to expand that role and doing that. And then we get to see year 3 play out with the national championship. And in today's landscape, which we'll get into, you know, you don't see that very often, and you probably won't see that very often going forwards. And if they are, they might be Southeast Elite kids. So getting right into that off the back of the tournament, with this year's NCAA tournament coming to an end on Monday, I'd like to ask Coach Kevin Sutton, do you feel that the game's in good hands? Do you feel like it's naturally evolving and progressing in the right direction? Or, do you think there's an area where we need to stop the bleeding and some urgent topics that need to be addressed?
Well, yeah, I think that college basketball is at a crossroads, actually. You see the sport of basketball is in a great place. Mm-hmm. We have some very, very talented, student athletes that are playing, and they're more skilled than they've ever been before. You have positionless basketball. You have bigs that can go out there and set multiple ball screens per possession, and then play out of that ball screen, whether it be roll all the way to the rim or pop or play out of the short roll. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, the game of basketball has continued to evolve, and it is that part of it is indeed in a good place. However, the business side of basketball is where I say that college basketball is at a crossroads. And with the transfer portal, the NLI, and all these things that coming into factors and coming into play, you don't see a student athlete do what Denzel did,
right?
And I can speak to that firsthand because 2 years ago I was at Kansas State University and we actually played Florida at home in Bramlage, and we beat them, and Denzel didn't get an opportunity to play, not 1 second.
Wow.
And I had known of him because the year before I was at Florida Gulf Coast, and I came up to Dr. Phillips to watch them practice. And Ben Witherspoon, who's returning to Dr. Phillips, had a great team and did a great job with them. But I go back to what Denzel, playing his role, like you said, and accepting that role, and it was hard. It was hard for him to accept that role, but he did it, and he kept his head down, and now his head's going to have a crown on it called a national championship. So I say, basketball's at a crossroads. I would say the business side is at a crossroads because the student athletes now have the opportunity to transfer really freely. They don't stay around long.
Yep.
They don't really go through anything that's adverse. First opportunity to leave, they take it. And it's not all their fault because the NCAA allows this to happen. And I tell people all the time, the NCAA punted on first down. Yeah. When Congress said that they could, the student athletes should be paid for their name, image, and likeness. And the NCAA said, we totally agree. You pay them. Yeah. And that's exactly what's happened. And now you have classism within the, college basketball. So the business side is, taking over, and you see student athletes making decisions, or business decisions for that matter. And a lot of times it's not even them, it's their circle of influence that are already brokering deals and trying to obtain as much money as they possibly can, because many of those student athletes are being represented by quote unquote agents who receive a healthy percentage. So if it's a young man like Denzel enjoyed Florida, moving forward, I'm not sure he's going to be able to continue to stay at the University of Florida with the amount of money that student athletes are getting paid now.
No, I totally agree. I think a point that, we had been talking about earlier was, working through some of the things and how before, if someone transferred, even if they transferred after their freshman year, let's say it was once, there's a red flag. Something happened, right? At minimum, they were upset with their playing time and experience. Mm-hmm. And coaches would see that and say, he's not going to play 32 minutes. How is he going to feel about his experience here? Maybe that's something that keeps them off of, going all in on the kid. Mm-hmm. Today, a kid can transfer 3-4 times. There may be no red flags.
It's what it is college basketball free agency.
Absolutely.
So,
100%.
So, we talk about a lot about where eventually we believe, and hopefully they do it, but I think it's got to be contracts, it's got to be collective bargaining, it's got to be some kind of regulation to it where, if you do sign a deal, maybe it's a 2-year deal, so at least you got the kid for 2 years, right? It's part of the reason why a lot of the older coaches are stepping down.
I would agree with that. I think that we do have free agency in college athletics now, and but I do want to make sure that everyone knows that I'm for the fact that student athletes should be able to get paid for their name, image, and likeness.
100%.
I am for that. However, there needs to be regulation. Yeah. We can't just sit here and throw money and amounts of money that are being thrown at these young men before they're mature enough to handle it. And so, I do agree with you, Rob, that I think that in some of the part of the regulations that's going to have to happen in order for us to not kill the goose, the proverbial goose that laying this golden egg, because at some point, I ask myself all the time, is this sustainable? Is this level sustainable? This year, a 2-guard is worth, $2.1 million, and then the following year he's worth $3 million.
Right.
And it only goes up. It never goes down.
Yep.
So now you're right. Is bringing in contracts and having student athletes sign 2-year contracts, and does that bring in a level of regulation?
Yep.
But I do, like I said, I do believe that they should. A student athlete should be able to prosper and make money off his name, image, and likeness. However, I do believe that regulations have to happen, in order for us not to kill the goose that laying its golden egg.
I also read somewhere too, and I wonder how you feel, but they said that the Cinderella era is somewhat over.
I read
right?
that too. I read that.
Just because now NIL money, big schools are going to attract better players. How do you feel about that? I mean, this is one of the first years I think, when I did my bracket, I told everybody, I said, I picked all 4 number 1s to make it. I'm probably going to lose because that never happens. And yet they all make it. Right. So,
I would agree with you, on that to a certain extent. One thing that March Madness has, and I was fortunate enough to see this firsthand 2 years ago, is you're going to have a team get hot.
Right.
We got hot. We put ourselves in a position to be in the NCAAs. We got a great draw. Our guard, Marquise Noel, got hot. He was having a great year.
Yeah.
And he was arguably, one of the best guards in the tournament at the time.
Yep.
So you might have that, but I do believe, and I totally agree with you, that as we move forward, the people that have the most money to spend, they're going to continue to, put their teams in a position where they're going to be the most successful. But maybe 1 year, you might have a team that get hot and just become that Cinderella team.
Curious to see if salary caps or the collective bargaining comes in, which will kind of level the playing field as well. That'd be interesting to see.
Tying it back to like Denzel's experience, you can argue that early frustration or being put in a box early is the motivator that makes them be in the gym early in the morning when no one's there, late at night when no one's there. And it's, I'm going to stick it through, and I am going to get those minutes. So you fast forward to 3 years, winning a national championship, and you really seen him develop incredibly. If it were, and not even just using Denzel as a specific example, but any player, if they did have the potential to do that, will that fire kind of be, dimmed because they may go to a place where they're given a little more of a role, a little more minutes, and it's like, okay, well, this is nice. This is comfortable. Instead of the 5 a.m. me by myself shooting, I'm going to sleep in. Maybe I'll just do nights now, and does that player ever maximize themselves? I'm all for getting paid. Yeah. Universities get paid. It's a business. People get paid. The player should get paid. From that standpoint of maximizing yourself and really just being the gym rat, do you think some of that is going to be seen less?
I think that happens in the NBA right now. Yeah. Guys get paid and they don't work as hard.
Yeah.
A term that I use all the time is that especially in recruiting, kids tell you, Coach, I want to be a pro. Coach, I want to be a pro. And I tell them all the time, no, you don't want to be a pro. Because there's a huge difference between being a pro and being a professional.
Yep.
And there's 12 letters that make up the word professional.
Yep.
If you just want to be a pro, then you just got the first 3 letters.
Yep.
Okay, and that represents the first contract. And then if you don't understand that the other 9 letters are what's going to keep you in there and have a 12-year career, then those 9 letters represent going to the gym early, staying in the gym late, getting extra lifts in, going to your mental coach, your leadership coach, your nutritionist, and doing all the things that you become a professional, that teach you how to become a professional. Because if you want to be a pro, you just have a job. Right. And then after 3 years, if you don't learn those things, you either sexed your way out the league, smoked your way out the league, you ran through all your money, okay? And then guess what? They do draft people every year, right?
Yep.
Okay, so if you're one of those guys who just want to be a pro and don't understand what it means to become a professional, you get drafted over.
Yep.
Okay, and so I say that all the time to all our student athletes. I said, no, you don't want to be a pro. You want to be a professional.
Right.
Because if you're a professional, then you have a career.
How much of that, and just I'm probably jumping around again. I'm
no,
the random question guy, right? But how much of that is now something you're prepping kids at that high level high school like an IMG, because as you prep them for college, because college is professional basketball basically now, where before you're prepping them in college for being a professional basketball player. Now you're almost in the high school prep space, trying to prep them for being a professional at the collegiate level.
You're absolutely right, and at IMG in particular, IMG, the Montverdes, and the prolific preps and the different schools that are out here now that have student athletes that if they didn't have to go to college, could actually go straight to the professional ranks. And we had a guard by the name of Darius Acuff this year.
Yep.
So I spent a lot of time talking to DA about when you become a professional, okay. When you get to that level, you want to make sure that you have an opportunity to stay at that level, because and that's learning how to work and and accepting the responsibilities that come with being a professional athlete, how you carry yourself, and all those different types of things in different types of ways. So yeah, we are talking about that. But the most important thing, we're talking about that to all of our student athletes, because as cliche as it may sound, they can become professionals. And they are going to become professionals in life.
In some form, yeah.
Okay,
correct.
It could be a lawyer, it could be a doctor, it could be a singer, it could be something. They're going to be professional. But we all know, is what it takes to become a professional. Mm-hmm. We don't just want to become a pro. You got to become a professional and have the work ethic, the grind, overcoming adversity, respecting the game, love for the game. Those are the type of things that give you a long, long, long career, versus having a job.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always say, even I think in our workouts, we always say, come in here and I say pro, I'm going to say professional now, but I say, make sure when we come here, let's be a pro. Let's be professional about what we're doing. Yeah.
I'm going to hold you to it.
Because, right. I'm going to have to say professional now because I love the fact that I'm missing 9 letters. But I always say the same thing. It's you come in here, you learn how to be a professional in what you're doing, and if it is, you want to be a college basketball player. Are you watching college basketball? Are you seeing how those athletes conduct their day, what their workouts look like, what speed they're playing at? Because if that's what you want to be, why are you in here not emulating that when that's what it takes? So I use the professional word a lot in practices and stuff. So that's great.
Well, I hear my oldest sister in my head right now saying, this is all really good stuff. Give us his background.
Yeah, right,
Tell us what he's done. I swear, if I sent it to her, that's what she'd text me. So, Coach, you're here and have, all of this knowledge from your experiences. Can you please share a little of what those experiences were and your journey through so that the viewers can have a frame of reference?
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. Basketball has always been my passion. I was really fortunate to pick up the game of basketball at age 10 and knew right away, living in the Washington, D.C. area where there's a high level of talent. Just give you an example on my 1700, AAU national championship team was a guy named Tommy Amaker, who's the head coach at Harvard. Okay, and my other backcourt mate was Michael Jackson, who won a national championship at Georgetown. Billy King, who went to Duke. Derek Sims, who went to Virginia. So we grew up in all relatively in the same area. So we loved the basketball. And then I had great coaches when I grew up. And my dad put me in positions to be coached by good people. So I recognized that really, early on, that what good coaching looked like. So I knew that's what I wanted to become. And then I went to, fortunate enough to went to James Madison University, greatest university, shout out to you. Went there, played basketball, and then got right into coaching. Got bit by the bug, and then I went to spent my 2 years there. And then after James Madison University, I went back to high school and spent 10 years in high school, and I'm really glad I did that. My high school coach is a Hall of Famer. His name is Stu Vetter. In 1983, when I was graduating, USA Today high school national ranking, Super 25 started coming out. And then our starting 5, all 5 of us went Division I basketball. And we were nationally ranked. We were the first nationally ranked team. And so he gave me an opportunity to coach alongside with him and learn from him. And it was the best 10 years of my coaching career. So I coached with him at 3 different schools, Flint Hill, Harker Prep, and St. John's Prospect Hall. And then I knew I wanted to become my own boss. So in 1999, I started Montrose Christian. Montrose Christian is a school in Rockville, Maryland. And most notably, Kevin Durant graduated from there.
Yep.
I'm not going to take credit for that because I didn't coach Kevin Durant, but I coached some pretty good other players there. And then I went to Old Dominion University for 2 years, spending those 2 years with Jeff Capel, Big Jeff Capel. His son, Jeff Capel III, is at University of Pittsburgh, and his brother, Jason Capel, played for me in high school. So I knew the Capel family very, very well. And so I joined his staff for 2 years. And then I left there and then came back to the high school level, which was Bishop McNamara. And I'm that guy, was there for 2 years and had a great experience, but I'm that guy that left Taiwan Lawson because an opportunity an opportunity came my way to go to Montrose Christian down here in Florida and Orlando area. And no one knew of the school. Montverde. Yeah. I'm sorry, Montverde. Thank you for the correction. Went there and no one.
We gotta make sure that we so they really understand.
Yes.
Especially in the Florida,
pre the Montverde Academy, now.
Yeah, no question. Yeah,
Coach Sutton started Montverde Academy.
I was fortunate enough to start it from scratch. Yeah. I went there, and I'm that guy that 9 other people said no, and I was the only one that said yes. Because at the time, Montverde, they had dormitories, they had a lot of resources, and I knew right away, and it was an international boarding school. And so those were 3 things that I had already had experience in: the international market and recruiting, and having very, very talented players. And if they're international, you got to have them someplace for them to stay. So if you have dormitories, that makes it that much easier.
Right.
Okay. And so it was really easy. Took over the program, and 4 years later, we won the school's first national championship.
Wow.
And then we were 30-0. Wild success, during the 8 years I was there. We were nationally ranked every year, and we were runner-up against the Findlay Prep team. So the foundation was laid. I tip my hat to Kevin Boyle, what he was able to add the next layer of the house.
Right.
Okay, yeah. But you can't add the second layer or the second floor if the foundation isn't laid.
Right. Yeah.
So after Montrose Christian, then I went on to the collegiate space. I wanted to become a college head coach. So I went to George Washington University for 2 years, and then was really blessed to recruit the class that ended up winning the NIT. I wasn't there with them. Was blessed enough to go on to Georgetown University, so I stayed 5 years in Washington, D.C. And the best thing that ever happened to me was every single day when I walked into that gym at Georgetown, I had the opportunity to learn from one of the greatest men by the name of John Thompson. And all he did was pour into me. And every time he saw me, for the first year, I didn't know my name was, what my real name was, because it always started with an M and ended with an F. But I totally accepted that. I was
That's awesome.
My name is Kevin.
It might not work today.
Right. Might not. Right. But so I was there for 5 years, and then I left there and went to the University of Pittsburgh. And I tell people this, and I want to make sure your listeners really understand this. I went against my code of ethics, and I chased money for the first time in my career. On a surface level, people would say, no, you made the right decision, because I left Georgetown making $150,000, okay, and I went to Pittsburgh and got a $100,000 raise. So I'm making $250,000, and most people would be like, whoa, that's pretty damn good. Yeah. But that was a hiccup in my career, because spent 2 years there, and we got fired as a staff. And for all you people out there, if you want to get into coaching, when your boss gets fired, you get fired.
You get fired.
Clearing house.
Your boss leaves with $10 million. You don't. you got to go home. You got to go to your wife and says,
he got bought out.
Yeah. You ready to move?
Right.
I like it here. Like, okay, that's good, but we can't stay.
Right.
So I was at Pittsburgh for 2 years, and then I went to Rhode Island for 3, and it was a great experience at Rhode Island working for David Cox. And then I came down. I wanted to get back to Florida. I came back to Florida Gulf Coast. And we had crazy success that year. Crazy success. Michael Fly. We had Tavion Dunn-Martin. Just wrap your mind around this for a second. He scored 700 points in a year.
Wow.
And so he was a newcomer of the year. We had, Kevin. He was our defensive player of the year. We had crazy success on that team. But again, if the AD and the head coach don't get along, changes are made.
Yeah,
and you're part of them.
And I'm a part of it.
A lot of it is your admin as well.
And so that happened. And then I went to Kansas State. After that, and the good Lord blessed me, and went to Kansas State, and we had a magical run. Jerome Tang and our staff did a great job. We went to the Elite Eight. We were one shot away from going to the Final Four. We lost to Florida Atlantic, and we were a really, really, really connected team, but they were even more connected. And what makes it even better is that you look at 3 kids that were on that Florida Atlantic team that went to the Final Four. Yeah. They played deep into the NCAA this year.
Yep.
So that's a tribute to Dusty May and his whole staff and those young men, to stay at Florida Atlantic and do what they did. So then after Kansas State, my family and I sat down and we made a quality of life decision, and that was to come to IMG Academy, which has been tremendous, and I'm the technical director of basketball with oversight of the women's basketball program. So my career has been a blessing.
So clearly, guys, he's the 3rd most accomplished coach at the table, by the way. Just clearly, as you guys can see.
Right? I could have done all that.
That's incredible. Incredible journey. Incredible journey that covers
decades.
3 decades, 4 decades.
Coming up on 4.
Yeah, that's incredible. Mm-hmm. You've done it all: high school, prep school, college. What do you think you get the most joy out of? What level, or
that's a
level matter?
That's a great question, and I say all the time, the quality of a person's question determines the quality of my answer. And you use one of my favorite words, and that's joy. Because for me, joy is an acronym that stands for Jesus, only you. And for me, I gained the greatest satisfaction, the greatest level of joy is impacting as many lives as I can with the platform that I have as an educator, coach, mentor, and leader to create living trophies. And living trophies is a term that I coined when we won our first national championship, and people asked me, why is this team special? And I just said, they're my living trophies, because when you win a trophy, you put it in a trophy case. And then it stays there for whatever number of years, 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years, and then you go get that trophy and you reenact a picture when you won it. Well, it has 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years of dust because it's been in one place for a long time. But when you take the opportunity and you pour into the young men and the young ladies that permit you, they have to allow you. And so when they allow you to touch their hearts and hear their dreams, and then you can pour into them and you can help them reach their dreams, that gives me the greatest joy and the greatest satisfaction. So thank you so much for asking me that.
Hope you're enjoying the show. This episode is proudly sponsored by Allstate Tom Patterson Insurance, your go-to for all things insurance in Florida and Georgia. Allstate is committed to supporting youth sports and empowering your future leaders both on and off the court. Plus, don't miss out on their new, more affordable auto insurance policy designed with you in mind. If you're looking for insurance that has your back, be sure to visit the comments section for a link to get your personalized quotes. Let's support the sponsor that helps make this podcast possible. I'm going to get back to it, but you coach my boy LD.
Yeah.
LD's probably going to see this. I'm going to need a story for LD that I have to be able to tell him later, but we'll get back to that.
I got several LD Wim stories.
No, Coach, you're the perfect person to discuss these topics, mainly because of your ability to grow where you are planted. I think that's a phrase we use a lot. Yeah. And which is why this episode is called Blueprints and Compass. Coach's ability to see the direction he wants to go in, where he can make the most impact, walk in that direction, create a plan for that new role and location, and execute it. And, something that we were discussing a little earlier is, for sure, we talked about it on the last episode, just the college coaching life and everything that happens. And a lot of those things is what, at a young age for me in coaching, I don't want to do those things, I don't want to relocate, it was just a lot. I had great coaches that I got to see and I kind of understood, my lane, but some coaches are throughout their journeys forced to be reactive, forced to, have to scramble at the end, find their next thing and just jump to it. I think your journey really speaks to moving with intent. As you said, some hiccups, being able to pivot from those hiccups and still take advantage and see it as an opportunity. And, you know, I think that's really inspiring that you've been able to do that. You know, most famously, as we talked, what you were able to do at Montverde Academy for certain had a hand in pioneering today's landscape just in general. From seeing what the academies are doing now in the Scholastic League, you've seen that league replicated now in several different directions. You know, Coach Rob competes in
the grind session.
The grind session.
Yeah.
You know, that's one. You know, in Florida, the SIAA is a separate league. And so you've seen a lot of those situations pop up all over the country, which I think is great. You know, we could probably have a whole debate about how it's public school.
It's an academy school popping up every
charter school, private.
Now.
Right.
Yeah, we could go into, you know, all of that. But at the end of the day, you know, there are people that have seen something work. And what I like about it is it doesn't take going to, you know, a place where a family would have to invest a significant amount of money to reach a certain platform to play against a certain level of competition. You know, now there are boutique type situations that may be able to replicate something similar. I think you definitely gave the blueprints as to how that can be done, especially in Orlando. I don't think it's a coincidence that, you know, Orlando has, and Florida in general, but Orlando has several situations where it's like, you know what, if I really just kind of form these relationships and make this team, we can make some noise together. You know, so I think your blueprint and compass style has impacted today's landscape as a whole.
Well, thank you. One thing I say all the time is that what I'm most proud of is during my time here in Central Florida, the state of Florida, while I was at Montverde, was if you go back in history, this Central Florida area was very, very dominant. Okay, when we won a national championship, and we were 30-0. Well, there was a high school by the name of Lake Howell who had a couple good players on that team too, you know, and they were well coached.
One of them's going to be our next guest. Yeah, that's for later. I got you guys.
Chandler Parsons, Nikki Calathis, John and Joey Rodriguez. And what people don't understand is that it was different because those 4 young men all went to the same middle school and were zoned to go to that high school.
Yep.
Okay, when I came down from the Washington, D.C. area, where it's a little bit different, where all the better players, they go to the private schools.
Yeah.
You know, they don't go to the high school, the public schools that they're zoned to go to.
Yep.
Well, when I first got down here, I used to go to the middle schools, and I would look around, and I was like, somebody's got to be coming here to watch these kids play. And no one came, and I figured it out that people were happier to go to Jones High School or happy to go to Evans High School. Okay, Edgewater was really good at that time, okay, because it was family legacies and lineage.
For sure.
You know, at those particular schools.
For sure.
But when I came here, we just really iron sharpened iron.
Yeah.
You know, and I used to open up on Saturday mornings, I used to open up our gym because this is what we did back in D.C. We opened our gym up and everybody in the area just came and they brought their players and we had all the best players playing in one person's gym. It could be your gym one week and be my gym one week or whatever. But when I came down here, that wasn't happening. There was no collaboration. Everybody was still, you know, Jason Richards over here, you know, Dr. Phillips can't take him over to play pickup. Kevin might steal him.
Hold on to him.
You know, I remember going up to the state association and the guy was like, you're not going to take Keith Brumbaugh, are you? I was like, well, first of all, I don't know who he is, okay, and I don't know where he is, you know, and I said, is it a school? And the guy was like, no, it's a player at Delane. I was like, okay, well, where's that?
Because I'm going to be in his gym tomorrow.
No, I was like, I don't know where it is, and I said, you know, that's not my intent, and that's where when the one thing that made what I did different is when you watched our teams play. Our team was a microcosm of our school. And I tell people all the time that the Orlando Sentinel, we won 24 games straight before they could pronounce my starting five's names because 2 of them were from Cameroon, Africa, and 3 were from Lithuania. And when we won 24, and I got the picture and I can see it, we finally beat Orangewood Christian, okay, off of I-4, okay, up in Maitland. You know, they were like, oh, this is a big story. And I'm like, It's the 24th win.
How times have changed.
But
it wouldn't be a front page. No more.
Right? But what's interesting is that to your point, the evolution of the game of basketball, and the evolution of high school basketball just continues to evolve. And so we have to continue to evolve. Because if we don't, then the antiquated way of thinking and the antiquated way that people, build programs are just going to become obsolete. Because it's like you can see it at the collegiate level where they talk about roster construction.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's all you're seeing. Everything has a trickle-down effect. Whatever they do in the NBA, they're going to try to do to replicate in college, right? Yeah. Whatever they do in college, they're going to try to replicate in high school, right? And you see it with the way that people are constructing their staffs. They got general managers, they got analytics guy who serves as the assistant general manager, and again, they got an offensive coordinator, they got a defensive coordinator.
Well, one trend you're seeing is they just hired at Oklahoma Trae Young as their general manager.
Yeah. Well, the first one was Luck at Stanford.
Okay.
And then it was Steph at Davidson. Yeah. Okay. And then now it was Trae Young at Oklahoma, and then Florida State.
Someone else. Terrence Mann.
Terrence Mann. Yeah.
And so it's going to be interesting to see.
Wow.
But the trendsetter at all of that was Duke University when they had Rachel Baker, who used to work at Nike. Now she's talented. Now she's legit. Okay, her dad is Rod Baker, and he grew up in the game, and he's been a scout and successful coach. So when Schreier took over at Duke, she became the general manager.
Wow.
And she had been at Nike and learned from some of the great people at Nike, George Raveling, Tony Dorado, and the people there. So she was one of the first people. And then you saw Villanova hire Baker Dunleavy. But that made sense because he was a former head coach, and then also he's a Villanova guy that was on their first national championship team. But now you see a lot of makeshift, copycats. So to my point, I'm saying people are at the collegiate level is looking at the NBA level, okay, and now high schools are looking at what's going on in college, all right, and then has a trickle down effect, with the number of college coaches, turnover in college coaches in those positions going in a different direction, almost having a front office. Don't be surprised if you see more college coaches or former college coaches try to come down and get a prep school and or academy.
Yeah.
And become the head coach.
Oh, yeah. Well, that leads me right into this question, all right? So what at both the high school and college level should a coach that just got a job at a new location, what should they be trying to build or establish in their programs within the first year or two?
They first got to work and move in their personality, okay? For a person like myself, the first thing I'm going to do is talk about, building relationships and how important relationships are. And I want to look around and I want to see every person that's going to touch my program. Okay, I want to have a meeting with the academic advisor. Okay, I want to have a meeting with the whole ADP staff, strength and conditioning. Okay, nutrition, leadership, mental, and all those people that's going to have some level of interaction with my players.
Yeah, they make contact.
Because I got to establish with them like this is what it's going to look like. This is how we're going to move. Okay, these are my negotiables. These are my non-negotiables. Okay, and are you a part of that? And if you are, then this is how it's going to be. If you're not going to be a part of that, and it comes with some little bit of grace. I'm not trying to act like I'm just authoritarian. But it's important in those meetings that they understand what Kevin Sutton's program is going to look like, and what it's going to be like. And it's going to be a transformational program.
Well, you wouldn't drop your child off at their friend's house if you didn't meet their parents. Oh, I know. You don't know who's in the house. So you're
trying to build relationships as quickly as you can. If it was in the high school space, then definitely I'm trying to meet the parent first, okay, and set up a meeting where I have sit all the parents down and just say, hey, these are what the program's going to be about. We're going to take a holistic approach to development, okay, and we're going to impact your child's life in all these ways. I'm a disciplinarian, all right. These are my negotiables. These are my non-negotiables, all right. And we are a working program, so everything is going to be revolve around developing a work ethic. Yeah. Okay, and so I want the parents to understand that, because then when I talk to to their child, then now the child will hear it for a second time, because the parent will also be on board. Yep. But when we all know what's interesting, that every parent will be like, oh, I love that, Coach Sutton. I love how disciplined you are, until I got disciplined there. I got disciplined their child, they come late, right? It's like, well, you can't practice today. Coach, you too hard. No. That's part of the discipline.
You signed up for it.
Well, that's the second part of this question. I kind of want to change it now based on, our conversation. I wanted to ask, what green or red flag should parents be looking at? But, what I think it comes down to really is a term that we've heard a lot over the past decade is a player's coach, right?
Yeah.
So immediately you think of someone that's cutting it up, buddy with their kids, and maybe, they can have that kind of relationship, which is amazing. It's a long season. There's bus rides. You're around each other a lot. You got to be able to kind of bring that down and be on a player's level and be able to talk to them. But it doesn't mean that person can't have a level of discipline within their program. So when it comes to, let's say a parent is looking around at different high schools, looking around for different colleges, aside from all the incentives involved, really just identifying with the coach, do you think parents should lean in today's landscape more towards someone that will hold them accountable and be a disciplinarian? Or do you think they should be searching for, that coach that's going to bring the kid in, talk to him, maybe give them 2 or 3 chances and really try to work through it? Or do you think it's a combination of the two?
I think what parents look for is what they don't do in a coach.
That's a great point.
They want to be the child's friend. They want somebody else to discipline their child.
That makes a lot of sense.
You know what I'm saying? If they're the disciplinarian, okay, then they want someone to be able to just to hand off and coach. Yeah. My philosophy has always been the same thing. Is when I talk to the parents, I'm like, listen, if I need to be the disciplinarian, I certainly will. Okay, but what all I'm trying to do is just take your kid from point A to point B, and if you've already instilled those things in them, then I'm just going to try to accentuate those things. But if you haven't, then I have to.
Right.
Okay. Well, time, for example. Okay. If a kid is historically late and his parents drop him off and late becomes the norm for him or for them. Okay. Well, if I set the tone and said, time matters.
Yep.
Okay. And if you're late to the bus, then I will leave you. Okay. And I stand up to it, and I leave you, okay, right. Then the parent should have to understand, like, okay, well, he's a man of his word.
Yeah.
So I got to change or we got to look for another situation.
Yeah. You don't want to see those missed calls and text messages because it's like, this is what I told you I was going to do.
Yeah, but I look at everything as a teachable moment. I really do. Yep. Like when a parent, says, Coach Sutton, can I talk to you, about this? I'm like, absolutely. Or a kid says, can I talk to you about this? And, you don't treat everybody fairly. I mean, you don't treat everybody the same. I said, you're exactly right.
Yep.
I treat everybody fairly. Okay. And I believe in the credit system. Okay. If you have credit, all right, and you don't, all right, and you both arrive here and you're late, all right, the punishment's going to fit the crime.
Yeah.
You're going to get punished. You're not, because you have built up credit. Yeah. You have done everything that I wanted you to do, and this is a mishap. Now, you might even be driving the car, okay? But then you're habitually late, and you with him, and you're like, I wasn't even driving. Okay, however, this ain't your first late.
You've been late once. This is my 10th time already.
So he made me late.
I was texting him.
I was waiting for him outside the house. Come on, hurry up. I got to go. I don't want to be late.
So consistency, and there has to be consistency in the leverage of the discipline, and so oftentimes parents will try to change the coach. They'll try to change them. I'm gonna send you my child, but I love the discipline, please, but you ain't got discipline mine.
They'll try to tell you how to deal with their child.
Yes,
this is how you navigate and work with them.
My child.
So I kind of blame our generation for our parenting. I've always said this. I said, my oldest son's 23. When he went through high school, I was like, man, this kid doesn't, he feels like you give him some shoes. It's like, you don't appreciate it as much because in our generation, when we grew up, Mom gave me one shoe for the whole school year. I might have one basketball shoe. I'm not getting another basketball shoe the next year, so I better take care of these, right? So then you start appreciating value of things. Our generation, we were like, well, if I'm gonna get me some Jordans, I'm gonna get my son some Jordans. We're gonna look cool together walking down the street. So they lose the appreciation things, right? Yeah. And of course, we're always in the phase of we want to provide more for our kids than we were able to have. So, I always kind of say this. I'm kind of curious how you feel, but I sometimes I'll tell kids like, look, your parents are here to comfort you. I'm here to make you uncomfortable because that's where growth happens.
Well said. Well said, and I agree with you. I 100% agree with you with that. No doubt. I mean, we as parents, we try our hardest to provide for our child.
Yep.
And we do the best we can.
Yeah.
We really do. But we have undoubtedly made their lives a lot easier than we had it.
Yep.
But now we gotta make sure they understand.
Gotta rein it in.
And pull it back a little bit because each generation it does, continues to go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And eventually, we all know what's going to happen. It's just like, it's just going to implode.
Yeah. Well, I think you made a great point is, as far as what parents should look for, I think it's a coach that has the awareness to discern what they need to do with each individual child. Mm-hmm. And, to your point, you don't treat every kid the same. That's because every kid is different, as you said, based on your credit system. And so, I think having conversations with a coach, and what I always try to do, as we do the Southeast Elite recruiting process, we go to high school games, we talk to parents. I try to give parents insight as to how I see that kid's brain working, that young man, young lady, whatever it is, trying to sit just throughout the game. I've watched them for, maybe play 3 times. Their personalities come out. Mm-hmm. When you see their personalities come out, you can figure out what their learning style is, their communication style. Mm-hmm. If you can adapt yourself to that, you can reach them. If a parent sees that you're observing and analyzing those things, you're taking that into account as you're talking to them, they're going to be more willing to go in that direction and it's not bending, and I think it is holding that line where it's like, I'm trying to understand them, but at the end of the day, these are the standards and they need to get with it, And
to your point, it starts in having a recruiting model, okay? You want certain student athletes in your program, but you have to have a recruiting model. For me, I want to have high character. I will always take character over talent.
Yeah.
Okay. I will always do that.
Save you from headaches down the road.
Yeah.
And then second, I want student athletes that are committed to getting their degree. They don't have to be rocket scientists, but they got to be committed to getting their degree. Okay. And third, I want people that celebrate diversity. Because I coach in international schools.
Yeah, of course.
My children are biracial, so in our household is biracial. We got 4 kids. My wife and I, we got 4 kids, but we've had 12 other kids in our house. We got 16 altogether. Yeah. So we got to celebrate diversity, and they come from all around the world because, the world isn't just Tampa, Florida.
Yep.
Yeah.
The world is vast, but it's also small
at
the same time. So you got to celebrate diversity, especially if you live in a boarding situation, work in a boarding situation. Then your roommate might be from another country.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is that's really, really important for me. You got to be passionate about the game of basketball with me. You can't. It's not lukewarm. Like I like it today, I don't like it, because I'm not having a good workout. You gotta be all in. You gotta like it. You gotta love it. I say all the time, you gotta love the game, or it's gonna love somebody else, and it should love somebody else. Because if you don't love it on a consistent basis, it should love somebody else. And then finally, I want to have kids that come from winning programs, that like winning, that understand what goes into winning. Okay, because we are going to win. Okay, that we're not winning at all costs, but we're going to win more oftentimes than we lose. Yep. Okay, and so you got to be a great teammate.
That's definitely something lost today. I think coaches really used to recruit based on
talent,
on winning programs. Yeah,
talent.
Today it's like all right,
straight up talent.
Well, I know your high school team's really bad, but you're really good, so let's bring you over here. But you see, how that environment has affected that player.
People accept things.
Right.
And if you come from a losing program, then you just like, well,
You know,
I'm kind of used to it. And
we were
I'm okay
on
with
the way here. I was talking to Marlon, who's in the back, not on camera right now, but we'll get him on camera one day. But we were talking about one of our groups, and we were saying how the group might not be the most talented, but 6 to 8 guys are winners. Which is they're going to overachieve. They're going to probably play better than expected. But you know, it is a lost art because I think again, most people recruit on talent.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of get into this a little bit, not to throw you off, but you know, you coached academy schools when there wasn't that many academy schools. Right. Now there's academies everywhere,
yes.
Right? And some of them just, hey, let's just bring the best kids in, throw them out there, roll the ball, and they're not being taught the right things. AAU was the same probably growing up playing. I remember when I grew up in high school play, wasn't a million AAU teams. You pretty much had to be pretty good to play on an AAU team for them to come get you. Yeah. Now there's 9 tournaments in probably in Tampa this weekend and with 60 teams in each of the tournaments. So how do you, over the years that you've watched it, how has that affected, I guess, overall everything, the quality, the game, just everything in general?
And the operative word in that sentence is quality. Yeah. Okay, because there's so much going on now is quantity. Yeah. You know, for an individual that likes quantity, okay, then this is great. Yeah. You know, this is great. But if a person, you know, like myself, I would rather have quality, okay, 5 tournaments that are of quality versus, you know, 10, 15 tournaments that have quantity, you know, in it. You know, so it goes back to your who you are as a person. I'm big on emotional intelligence. Yep. I am really big on it. You know, I've been studying that really, really, really. You know, once I figured out, you know, that I was already doing this before they gave it a name. Now I know what I'm doing, and I can sound smart. Okay,
we got the blueprint. You know what I'm saying?
You know, and so, but it does, and I tell all of our coaches, you know, at IMG, part of what I do down there is coaches education. Mm-hmm. You know, and I tell them all the time. I said, you have to spend time with yourself. As awkward as that sounds, and as uncomfortable as it may be, turn your face around and look inside yourself and start to figure yourself out. Mm-hmm. What's my negotiable? What's my non-negotiables? When I was a young coach, everybody had to wear the same shoe, Adidas. Okay, but they had to wear the Adidas 3-stripe.
We love that.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Okay, clever. Right?
We don't have to edit it in.
Yeah. So everybody had to wear the same shoe.
I love that.
And as a young coach, there was no wiggle room.
Right.
Until one player, okay, the shoe didn't fit him properly.
Yeah.
Okay, and he injured himself.
Yeah.
All right. And then I just said this is just the opposite of smart.
That must not have been a pair of Adidas that he wore that day.
I think he had a pro model. But then I figured it out. I said, hey, everybody wear Adidas.
Yeah.
Any ones you want that fit you.
Yeah.
You know, and I quickly adjusted myself.
Yeah.
Okay, after a game is over, right? The kids play, you know, I used to say, oh, no, after the game is over, we're going straight to here. Boom, boom, boom. And then I figured out, I'm like, wait a minute. I can negotiate off of that.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, Coach, let's go to Chipotle.
Yeah.
Why do we always have to go to Chick-fil-A?
Yeah.
And I'm like, we go to Chick-fil-A because the number 7 meal is the spicy chicken, and I can get a Sun Joy.
Those are the 2 staples for any AAU road trip. Just being on the road.
Chipotle, for real.
They're good everywhere.
Every time, right?
Yeah,
so, but I quickly figured out, like, hey, hold on, hey, you guys choose.
Yeah.
Because what did I do? I took my ego and just threw it out the door.
Kids love that too. Then you actually, the kids buy them more when you do that.
They love that.
Yeah.
Okay, they have more ownership into it, right?
Yeah.
You know, before the game, hey man, we win, we going to boom.
Yeah.
All right, Coach, we won. We want to go to.
Yeah.
Great. You know, but when you spend time with yourself, you become more self-aware.
Yeah.
Okay, and what you'll accept and what you won't accept, what's your negotiable, what's your non-negotiables. One thing that I do is I have a system where it says to come here, to play here, to succeed here, and to soar here. And then under those things are 3 other, 4 things that are underneath what it takes, you know. And I make it really clear, like, in order to come here, for me to recruit you, you got to have those fit my recruiting model. Yeah. Okay, to stay here, you got to be, and all these different types of things. So I just try to be as upfront and transparent as possible. But that took years of me, turning and looking internal.
Reflection,
and a lot of self-reflection and realizing, like, man, you're not smart.
You know what I call that? I call that not being a dinosaur.
Right. Yeah.
I tell people, don't be a dinosaur.
Yeah, no
you grow, you learn, you evolve,
no
or you be a
question.
dinosaur, and you guys know what happened to dinosaurs.
Right.
Well,
I think
but to your point, I'm sorry to cut you off, but to your point, another thing that you made that I think is really invaluable, and coaches can do this, leaders can do this, but people choose not to do it. Okay? Why not, when you get your team together, give them all a personality inventory? An assessment. Have everybody take it. You take it. Have all your coaches take it. Have all your players take it, so nobody feels singled out.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody feels singled out. We got them all, right?
Yeah.
Bam, bam, bam. I learn your personality. You know me.
Like the disc test.
Disc assessment.
Yeah, disc assessment.
Yeah. All of that type of stuff. Okay. Second, everybody take a learning inventory because we all know that there's visual learners, there's read-write learners, there's auditory learners, there's kinesthetic learners. All right. One of the smartest things that ever happened to me was my wife is an educator, and she's a way better educator than I'm a coach. And she used to sit up and watch us practice, and she would tell me which ones were visual learners, which ones were auditory learners, which ones. It was the best day ever because I'm like screaming at this kid, and she's like, "You can scream all you want. You can scream all you want."
I always say the wives see things.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's one thing. Coaching I've learned is I have to understand different ages learn differently, and then everybody learns differently. Some people have to see it multiple times. Some people get it right away.
Right.
Some people don't want you to tell them; they just want to learn on their own real quick. And so I've kind of learned to adapt as much as possible, but I do still run into sometimes where I'm like, "Come on, man, I gotta keep moving. We're running out of time."
But you might not be able to do it in the AAU. But what we used to do, was for all my kinesthetic learners, okay, regardless if they were starters or played, when we went over scouting report, they were on the court with a coach, and they were going through the stuff because they had, a kinesthetic learner has to move.
Yep.
Okay. My visual learners, they went to the locker room and then they watched tape, okay, with a coach. All right. And then the guys that are like myself, like to take copious notes and then go back and type them and transcribe them and then commit it to memory. I would give them blank diagrams, and then I would have a coach in the locker room going over the sets and whatever. And
so you would have them all learning separately.
That's amazing.
Before
look, let me tell you, I like to tell you it was my idea.
Yeah. That's a great idea. I've never tried that.
You might not have time to do that in an
yeah. But like in a high school setting,
what? You got all the time. You got all the time to do it.
Baseball practice does it. You got the whole team doing 8 different stations there.
Yeah. So it was, and it's always been successful.
Yeah.
I mean, that way everybody, was just like she used to say, like my wife says all the time, it's like, when you're in the Eagles, the Robins, or the Crows, they all birds, right? But we all know there's reading levels.
Well, it takes a lot of security to delegate and to be able to, allow other people to have a hand in it, like you said. And
it takes a secure person to share their knowledge.
Yep.
And one thing that I try to teach our players all the time is like, we're secure. Okay. I'm secure as a coach. That's why I'm going to invite you in, even if we play. Yep. I'm going to invite you in. This is what we do. This is how we do it. This is what, and now, okay. And when we play, we play. Okay. Insecure coaches, no. They want to squirrel away their knowledge. They want yours, but they sure is not sharing theirs. So I want my players to see what secure looks like versus insecure. Yeah. So I'm going to demonstrate all of that.
Correct.
Okay. And my players would say all the time, like, why are you inviting them? We played them in 2 weeks. I'm like, exactly. You showed them all our sets. I'm like, I still stop?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do your job. Set the screen.
Well, I think
LD, go to the moon.
Yeah.
That's very
throw the ball up.
That's a very interesting point that I always make is, I think the performance of coaching during the game, is something that coaches are thinking about, and the insecure ones are going to yell. They're going to call a timeout and yell loud enough for people around to hear. They're not doing what I want them to do. Correct. This is what's happening because this is what I want them to do, and they're not doing it, and I'm going to let everyone know. Whereas the example that I like to use is, as you say, professionals, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not really big into it, but if you ever go to a play, like a real theater, Dr. Phillips Theater in New York City, Broadway, those are professionals, right? Have you ever seen a play where someone just stops in the middle of it? The play stops. Someone comes over from the sidelines, they read it, they go back and they continue it. That's never happened anywhere because that person would not have the role if they weren't prepared. So theater takes practice very seriously for the performance. Yet in basketball practice, you can have a coach that takes practice really, really seriously to the T. I've had coaches like that. I tried to be similar, in the same way and really hone in on being the disciplinarian within that time frame. Those guys during games may not be so animated, may not be, doing all the theatrics, and they could get a reputation for not coaching hard.
Stoic. They're sitting there,
they don't coach this and that. And it's like, but have you compared our practices? He has to do that, or they wouldn't really execute anything. I can sit there because they know what they're doing. And if they don't, we'll call a timeout. I'll say, what are you guys doing? And then we'll talk about what we're gonna do. But to spend a 60-second timeout on letting everyone in the gym know that they didn't do what you wanted them to do, that's poor coaching to me. I think it takes a security to not let the ball roll out, but maybe gain that reputation because you are confident in your players are confident in the game plan, and they're playing it out.
I think that goes back to the discipline word, right? Like, I don't know why people look at, I know it sounds like a scary word. It's like, oh, disciplinarian. It's like, oh my God, I'm scared of that. That sounds bad. And really, to me, it's not bad because what I've realized is when you are like that and you keep kids on a schedule or just disciplining what they do, they show up on time. Oh, you're late, we hold you accountable. Maybe you run sprints, maybe whatever the punishment is. After a while, it becomes habit for them showing up on time. They're almost scared to show up late. Oh my God, coach is gonna get on me. But then, I've had kids where, I don't coach them anymore and the discipline changes and they're like, man, we missed the discipline.
Yeah.
And
they want to be coached.
Because
they want to be
taught. I think kids actually want that.
They do.
They absolutely want to be coached. I don't know if anybody that wants to be successful doesn't want to be coached and held accountable, but I can only hold them accountable if I have to. I have to hold myself accountable first, and I got to hold my staff accountable. And I tell our staffs all the time. And my coaching staff say, don't tell them to do something and then you don't do it first. Okay, because we have to model the behavior, and we have to make sure that we understand that what we do, is what they're going to emulate. So if you say be here on time, all right, and whatever we determine on time is, all right, then you need to be here earlier. So there's no excuses, because they shouldn't be that way, because they definitely want to be coached, and they definitely want to have people in their lives that's going to help them be successful.
The grades do.
Yeah.
So we have time for one more topic.
Yeah.
And in this one, I wanted to open it up, to Coach to present any talking point you'd like to discuss or ask, or I just wanted to give you the floor and, let you share.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about that question, earlier today, and for me, coaching education, I just really believe that we have to do more in that space, and if we want to see the game that we love, get better, because if we grow as coaches and as leaders, then our players are going to grow, and they're going to continue to improve. And it's not so much all about their improvement on the court, but we have, with that title of coach, we have a responsibility in so many different areas, because we can impact a life in such a way with words, positivity. I tell our coaches all the time, be a ladle, be that ladle that fills a person's bucket with positivity. Or you can be a ladle that empties a person's bucket with your words of negativity. So you choose, You choose. And then if you're going to be here on this staff, then you're going to be that ladle that's going to fill people's buckets. So we got to continue to grow as coaches, go into to learn different things, learn the why, behind things, and not just look at, say the kids don't know how to play, and then well, you're the coach. Why don't you teach them? Right. You are responsible. But that title of coach, for me is just like I said before. I view myself as an educator. I view myself as a leader. I view myself as a mentor. Okay, and then lastly, I view myself as an educator because I have an opportunity every single day to impact lives, and change lives. And I tell people all the time that I'm a selfish coach, and they're like, "No way, you're selfish. You're always giving." I said, "No, I got a 14-year-old daughter, okay, that is coming up in this game, and she's a good player, St. Stephen's,
good basketball and volleyball player,
and I pour into my coaches because I don't know which one of them are going to be her coach. I don't know which one of them is going to be her teacher. I don't know which one of them are going to be in her life. Yep. So if I do it the right way and I pour into them, then I can sit in the stand if they happen to be her coach, and I don't have to micromanage.
Yeah.
Okay. So I say all the time, I am selfish because I want my daughter to have the opportunity, to play for, have her life impacted by, a person who, heard her heart when she said she wanted to become this or wanted to become that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I need people in her life because, she's real special to me. And I take that responsibility seriously. And that's why I say coaching education, families are handing over their most prized possessions to us.
Yeah.
So we got to keep evolving. We got to keep educating ourselves. Okay. We got to keep empowering ourselves. Okay. And then we got to keep engaging.
Yeah.
If we do those things on a consistent basis, then the game of basketball, the sport of basketball, okay, and then we're going to raise up the next generation of some great people.
Yeah. Fill buckets, don't be a dinosaur. Coach, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Loved
Coach.
it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Southeast Elite, Episode 2, Blueprints and Compass. A special thank you to our presenting sponsor, the All-State Tom Patterson Insurance, for their unwavering support of youth sports and making this show possible. Remember, All-State has just launched a new, more affordable auto insurance policy to help you protect what matters most. Don't forget to check the comment section for a link to get your quotes and learn how you can get that coverage that fits your life.
Appreciate you, Tom Patterson. Thank you. Coach Sutton, man, the legend, man. Hey, the third most accomplished guy at the table, I'm telling you guys.
Well, thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
Appreciate a lot of what's going on today, and we're continuously thankful for your friendship, and hope to connect again.
Surround myself with good people. I've always done that. I'm real fortunate, and so quality, iron sharpens iron.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, Coach.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Southeast Elite Podcast. A special thank you to our presenting sponsor, the All-State Tom Patterson Insurance, for their unwavering support of youth sports and for making the show possible. Remember, Allstate has just launched a new, more affordable auto insurance policy to help you protect what matters most. Don't forget to check the comment section for a link to get your quotes and learn how you can get the coverage that fits your life.